when you look at it from a turnover, from a Limerick point of view, like Graham Mulcahy is maybe the only one that might walk away, and he'd be mad to walk away. He's still getting game time on with the best team in the country. So yeah, he's slowly introducing, like, Cotton O'Neill is now coming on All Ireland finals and scoring 2 points, having, served maybe a tough apprenticeship starting out that day in Salt Hill in 2021. I'd say Adam English is probably disappointed given some of the cameos that he's had this year, but their time will come. Like, but people say, "Oh, Limerick are using the same players they've used since 2018." Yeah, there's a reason for that. Do you know what I mean? There's a reason. Like, none of these guys are slowing up at all. Their form is not really dipping, and it's grand saying that. I think that's something that people clutch on to say, "Oh, they're using the same players. They're going to be tired or whatever." They don't look tired. They look, kind of energized. But just something I want to throw at you, Leo. When you think of the amount of turbulence that Limerick have been hit with down through the years, when you just off the top of my head, would say Hannon been out yesterday, Finn been out, Keane Lynch's hamstring, Peter Casey been out. Would say the crack that happened in New York that time. Would say Pat Ryan getting dropped last year. No, genuinely. But how they have managed all this, and to be honest with you, how John Kiley has managed all that and kept the train firmly on tracks is it's kind of unbelievable, really. Even Richie English been out. We were talking before the show, before the game yesterday, Shane. Like, look at the lack of options in defence, and they just plough on. It's amazing, really, that no matter what obstacle is put in their way, they just plough on through it.
Look, I'll be honest, Joe, and I've worked with John. I worked with John in 2011. John was selector in 2011 with me. When we get on the bus, we go into challenge matches and whatever, and John would come on and sit alongside me, and we were talking. Pat Donnelly was there, Pat Davern. We were really, we had good times at the start of it there. And when you look at it, and John would always say, right, what are we getting out of tonight? That was one of John's questions, and he's so meticulous. His attention to detail is absolutely phenomenal. John is a man, he's a leader, and he's a man's man. He's, I know many times, we'd question different players, and next thing you'd hear this coming out, John going, look, he's just going to have to get over it. This is the way it is. And that's one of the things that I always remember John for. He's just phenomenal. He's the energy he brings, his astuteness. He has laid himself down. He's up there with Cody now, 4 Irelands in a row, 5 and 6 years. Like, I know Cody was there for 22, 23 years. It's phenomenal. Like, and no one questions that. And no one can question John Kiley now. John Kiley's astuteness, along with Paul Kennerk on there, is absolutely phenomenal. It's the Alex Ferguson of football. You're just, you can't take anything away. It's meticulous. The backroom staff, everyone knows their job. Everyone knows what they're doing. And even as one or two of the players have alluded to it, then they all know their game, right? On the field, when you look at John, right, and he said it yesterday in an interview after the match, that their astuteness and how off the hoof, how they work things out themselves. John can say that all he wants, but I know that comes from John. That ability to adjust within a game, to get the word out to the field. Just on a different note, it's amazing Nickey didn't go down yesterday. The rest of the GA world can worry about that one now.
It's funny, Leo. I'll let you go on this one. Where's the end? Where's the end for Limerick? Kieran Carey has said that he reckons by the end of it all, they'll have surpassed what the Dublin footballers have achieved in the run from, we'll say, 2011 to 2020, and maybe this year. Like, how much more do you think is in the tank? What's the end game going to be when this Limerick squad eventually breaks up?
I think yesterday Michael gave them another 2 years, and I mean, very, very straight. I think that, not being arrogant about it, I think next year they're installed as favourites already. I think the hardest part for John next year is get players in the National Hurling League, get players up to the pace. But as I mentioned already, there's Aidan O'Connor, Shane O'Brien. I think they need more time next year in the National Hurling League and bring in a little bit of more vibrancy and a little bit more energy into the championship. I think whether Limerick go on, the challenge is there as well to win 6 in a row in Munster now. But certainly the challenge is to get out, to get to Croke Park again. I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. When Limerick get to Croke Park, this team, it's like a home venue for Limerick to get to Croke Park. It's like being in the 1500 metres and you're coming around the last bend. You have 200 metres to go, and when they get to Croke Park, they can see the finish line and they get a new lease of life. And that's been proved over the last 3 or 4 years. I think, as I said yesterday, I think it has given them another 2 years. It's going to take a mighty challenge. It's going to take a mighty challenge for any other county. People are not mentioning the county that I'm going to mention, but Cork over the last 3 or 4 years at under 20 level to have players coming through. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for Limerick next year. Certainly, the Clare challenge will be met. Tipperary, whether they're going to really step up to the mark next year, he has to find 3 or 4 new players that are going to be ready to go into a 15. So from my point of view, Limerick, without shadow of a doubt, saw this as major favourites next year. Kilkenny will always be there. They won't go away. Kilkenny are Mr. Consistency. And certainly, from that point of view, the Galway situation, Galway are small, still a small little bit off it. They've all to find players where Limerick are trying to find players to introduce them to a team that's winning All Irelands, that's winning Munster Championships. As I said, another 2 years, may the best team win that comes up and challenges Limerick and takes them on and turns them over. Clare did it this year. If you look at the amount of games that Limerick have played over the last, I suppose, 5-6 years, there's an awful lot more games to win in All Ireland now than there was back in the 80s, back in the 90s. So the miles and the clock is going to be a phenomenal factor. Provided they stay injury free, we are, I think, another 2, definitely 2, possible 3 years around the place.
You're after throwing a little spanner in the works there. So you're after saying about the amount of games that you've played to win it. Like, do you rate this 4 in a row better than Kilkenny's 4 in a row as a result of the amount of games and the quality that they've had to beat along the way?
This 4 in a row is a better 4 in a row than Kilkenny 4 in a row, I think, without shadow of a doubt, because the amount of games that they've played. But certainly, in terms of quality, I think it would be one massive challenge. I'd hate to be the slitter that'd be thrown between and this, as I said earlier, the Kilkenny the Naughties were a physically bigger, stronger team than this team that they have at the moment, and certainly they'd be well able to match Limerick in terms of physicality and their work rate. Phenomenal. And when you throw Henry Shefflin, Michael Fenley, Jackie Tyrrell, Mike Kavanagh, oh my God, like, that's quality, all over the place. And that's what I think Kilkenny are lack just a small little bit. They didn't have the physicality to match Limerick when it really came down to it. That 15-minute period, I would term the middle 15-minute period in the second half, where, as I said, 20 minutes to go, 13 points to 4. But certainly, look, it's a phenomenal achievement. Certainly the amount of games they've played and only beaten once, this year. And they've played through the tough times, COVID times. And look, I know I'm a Limerick man, but you've got to take your hat off them. They're absolutely phenomenal and very, very worthy 4 in a row All Ireland champions. And as I said, throw the spanner in the works. Yeah, the amount of games they played, phenomenal.
Shane is smirking there because he said it to me yesterday and nearly got sick on a table in Croke Park. He said, "Who's the only team that Limerick weren't able to beat this year?"
Clare.
No, they beat Clare.
Eventually they played them twice, but the only team that they played that they didn't beat at some stage was Tip.
There you go. They'll hang on to anything they can get, Leo. Absolutely.
When's the cup presentation for
that? Wishful thinking, Michael. Wishful thinking, Shane.
Yeah. Leo, thanks very much for joining us and enjoy the spoils of victory.
Be good. Bye.
Cheers, Leo. Come on. Right.
Nicky, do you think that based on Limerick's last couple of games where they went, 5 or 6 behind and they ended up winning the last 50 minutes, we'll say, give or take, by 15 points against both Galway and Limerick, Are we looking at a Limerick team that's beginning to pull away from the pack, or do we sort of reflect back on Munster when most of the games are very, very tight and say, okay, this is sort of given a different complexion the last couple of games? There are a lot of teams that are relatively close.
Look, the reality of it is that there is a gap in between the overall competitiveness of the Munster Championship and the Leinster Championship. Munster is far more competitive. That's the absolute reality of it. And we don't need to be snobbish to say that is the reality of where the hurling scene is right now. And I think, again, in 2024, Limerick will encounter some of their biggest challenges in Munster. Now, I do think that Clare, I think, will hurt after the way things turned out. I think Tip have a bit of rebuilding. I think Waterford have the game against Tipperary this year will have actually put Waterford in a better frame of mind, I think, for next year. and I think the county that has the most prospects, if they can get everything together, is Cork. I mean, they have some phenomenal players coming on, but I think they just need to consider changing their style a little bit. I think some of the Cork style is they're not able to handle the whole physicality of the thing yet, and they just need to develop a few leaders around the field, among other things. But in terms of who the next big name coming out of Munster will be, after Limerick, of course, will be Cork, but that might take a couple of years. But I'm looking forward to see how Cork they develop over the next year or two, because they should be in a good position given the phenomenal underage talent that they have. Kilkenny will still continue to be strong in Leinster. I think Henry has a bit of rethinking to do with Galway, and we just have to wait and see what happens over there, whether he's going to stay there. But it's still looking like Limerick are the team to beat for the next year or two, and they certainly are in a very strong position. Kilkenny were in this strong position for the 5 in a row as well, but all hell went loose in Kilkenny when the whole hype took over the whole thing. I was there one of the evenings in Kilkenny prior to the final, and there must have been 10,000 in Nolan Park. And I think we just maybe that was one occasion when we overhyped the situation, and we got caught in the end.
Then Limerick won't allow that to happen, and I think they've guarded so well against all of that already. Like, even various things happen, and maybe a player is dropped from the squad, and the name doesn't even get out there in the media really. Like, everything is kept so under wraps. I just don't really I don't see the hype of the drive for 5 getting to them, to be honest with you. Like if you look at who they were missing this year, they were missing 4-time All-Star Finn, they were missing their most successful captain in hurling history. They're able to negotiate that. Like, providing they're in decent form next year, maybe they'll have a clean bill of health next year. And I do think Kylie will dilute the hype. So I think you probably in Kilkenny, maybe the mistakes Kilkenny made in 2010 have probably shown the way forward for others, maybe how not to do it. And I do think they'll guard against that really well, I have to say.
No, I agree with you, but you've been around a long time covering media matters now, and I've been involved. I've tagged along behind a lot of you guys who are in the media at this day and age, and you know how difficult it is now to get access to any intercounty manager, intercounty players. It's all very formalised, structured, and all that. So it's a very, very different scene. I mean, in 2010, counties were letting supporters in to watch the training taking place. That is all gone now. It doesn't happen anymore. You simply know what's happening. We were all speculating, was David Blanchfield going to play or was he not going to play? There was rumours abounding about Aaron Gallan, about Barry Nash, suppose having his boot in his foot going into the match. Stories are now breaking out, and 99% gone through. So that's the way the world is gone now. So John Kiley, of course, will he might be able to make a few old wild comments in this day and tomorrow. That's the book closes then, and everything then is geared towards the 5 in a row, and they will manage that very well, and there will be very little active players. The players will be told to not even talk about anything you like other than hurling, and that's the way it's going to be. So it'll be a world of difference the way it was in 2010 when Limerick go for their 5 in a row next year. Expect to hear very little from Limerick in that regard, and you'll get the 2 players and the manager down in Park Gale in Limerick for an afternoon for 2 hours, and that's about the extent of what you